I dug this Husqvarna 125B out of the trash last week, and boy did it turn into a basket case. It runs terrible. I've already replaced the carburetor and the cracked up gas lines, but it really didn't help a whole lot, a little bit, but not much. In this video, I'm gonna show you exactly what happened to this thing and how to fix it. Okay, so without further ado, let's dive right in. All right, so let me give you a quick rundown of what this thing is doing here. As long as you keep it on choke, it'll kind of halfway run. You have to kind of feather the choke back and forth like this to keep it running, but that's really all it wants to do. Now, I did replace the carburetor and the fuel lines to try that out just to see, and it really didn't help it at all. I knew that wasn't the problem anyway. So what's really going on here is we have low compression. As you can see here, our compression test is about 65 right now. The most I've seen out of it is about 80 or so. That's really too low. We want probably 120, 130, somewhere in that neighborhood on this thing, and we're nowhere near that, so it is not running good at all. Let's go ahead and take this thing apart, and I'll show you how to change that cylinder. All right, so we're gonna have to get the motor out. We gotta get this cover off right here. We've got a 5/32 Allen wrench right here. Now, once you get these screws out, in order to keep from getting them all mixed up, it's a good idea just to put the screws right back where you got them from. Just got 3 more screws right here. 1, 2, 3. Let's go ahead and take out our throttle linkage. And I'm going to go ahead and remove the coil. Now, these magnets are set at about 5 thousandths. You'll want to check yours right here where the magnet is to make sure. And we have 2 T25 screws right here. Let's pull them off. Let's go ahead and bust the flywheel loose. If you have an impact, that is the best way to do that. And what you'll want to do is kind of put that nut back on there, like so, and kind of lightly tap it with a hammer. There we go. Going back to our 5/32 Allen wrench, we need to get these screws out of here to get this shroud off. Taking note that 3 of the screws are kind of machine screws because they thread into the engine, and 2 of the screws are plastic screws or more coarser threads, so make sure not to mix those up. Go ahead and pull this off and put the screws back in the holes. All right, so next let's get this carburetor out of our way. There's just 2 5/16 nuts in here. Go ahead and get your air cleaner box out of the way here. It goes right through this hole right here. We'll just go ahead and undo this top fuel line right here. And just do the same thing and take a screwdriver and kind of pry that bottom one. Let's go ahead and get this muffler cover out of the way. It just comes right out right there. Now we're back to our 5/32 Allen wrench. We're going to get these 7 Allen screws out of here to take this other plastic cover off. And just pull the cover off. All right, so let's take this blower fan off. Now this one is left-hand thread, so it's righty-loosey, lefty-tighty. Now we're down to our final 3 motor mount bolts. These are a T25. And this motor should come right out. And we'll go ahead and pull our muffler off. Now this one uses a T30. All right, so we got to continue stripping the head when we put the new one on. Got to go ahead and get this carburetor adapter off of here. Back to our 5/32 Allen wrench. And once you do that, it just pulls off. Now we're down to the last 4 bolts in the crankcase. Now these are the T25s. Just undo them and make sure you keep them separate. Now just gently pry it apart. All right, now this gasket already fell out of its place, but if they're kind of stuck in place, don't force them. Just take a little screwdriver and kind of gently pry them out of there. Unless you've got new ones, then it doesn't really matter. Now, just go ahead and put your crankshaft all the way down like so, and pull that puppy right out just like that. All right, so our old cylinder is pretty well scuffed up on the inside. I've already looked at it. Luckily, I have a used one that came off of a good blower. Now, I want you to notice something here about this. See how this one's kind of got the intake port right here, where we took the carburetor off a minute ago? Those cheap ones on Amazon are for a different style. They say they fit the 125B, but when you get it, now I ordered this on purpose to show you guys, this is the intake port on the other style on the one on Amazon. So yeah, this one was like 20 bucks. You're like, oh good, it's only $20, I'll get that one. But if you go ahead and get this one, I've seen a lot of reviews, you know, if you read the comments, it says, oh, it didn't fit, oh, it didn't fit. Well, here's why, because the intake port is totally different. Unless, of course, you have this style of head, then it'll fit, but most of them are this style. Now also what you'll want to do is take a paper towel or something and clean up the bottom cover of your crankshaft right there. Make sure there's no dirt or grit or anything like that in there, because that'll wind up in the motor and it'll mess it all up again. All right, so we're going to go ahead and replace the piston too. I'm not going to go through all this trouble and then not replace the piston. Luckily, I had another used piston, but I'll leave links in the description below for your parts. You'll just have to make sure that's the right part for you. Now we just need to pull out one side of the retaining clips. There's a retaining clip on both sides of the wrist pin. So just take some long nose pliers and pull it out of there. And the wrist pin is not hollow, so you can use something from the other side to poke it through and it'll come right out. And there we go. Now there is something I want you to notice about the way the piston was in there. There's a little, where the ring is broken right here, there's a little pin that sticks through where the ring ridge is at. And that pin was facing the flywheel side. You can tell that because the crankshaft is tapered right here. That's where the flywheel went. All right, so we've got our crankshaft sitting on top of our new head. We're just gonna add just a little bit of oil inside the rod, and just a little bit on top of the wrist pin right here. And that'll just make sure that it doesn't have a dry start. Now remember, our little opening right here faces the flywheel. Now I have found that the best way to get this little retainer clip in is to kind of get it started like that, and then carefully turn it in the hole. Not letting it fly out of there, because it'll wind up in the next county and that'll be the end of it. And just work it into the groove. So just add a little bit of oil to your piston. And you could even put a drop in the cylinder. And just push it down in there. Make sure everything's turning good, and then put your cap back on. Now when you put the cap back on, make sure the 2 holes for the carburetor hold down are on the carburetor side, on the intake side. And just put your cap back on and put the screws back. Alright, so I've already started putting the motor together exactly the way I took it apart, but I wanted to show you a couple of other things while I'm here. On the flywheel, see, we have a keyway right here. You want to make sure and get that right. And on the flywheel itself, there's a little dot right there. If you can see that dot. Well, that dot lines up with that keyway So just like that, no problem. The torque spec on that is good and tight. I just slipped a feeler gauge in there on one side of the magnet. But not tight, just make it so that it's just barely making contact. Move that over to the other side. Do the same thing over there. You might have to do that a couple of times to get it just where you want it. Go ahead and try both sides. And we're good, and then go ahead and tighten it down. And I just wanted to show the throttle linkage real quick. This hook goes right around the throttle right there. And then of course the Z-bend part goes right there. There's only one hole in the carburetor. So just like that. The hook is facing in, as you can see that. Just hook it around there. And then it goes back on that little post right there. Just like that. Yeah, about 130 or so. I'd say that's a whole lot better than the 70 we got earlier. Runs like a champ. Hope this video has been helpful. Thanks for watching.